so delighted and happy to be here. Thank you. Well, it's been a part of my life for quite a few years, coming to Eritrea, visiting villages, having friends, and learning about people's lives in Eritrea and the artists, and learning during peace and during war and during peace again. So I have a great fondness for the people and for all they have experienced. Every year from 1994 to 22. So I think it was 8 years then, and now 2 more times, so 10 times. Each painting has a particular place and meaning and experience, so we have to sort of look one by one or whatever, but it comes from just sitting with the people or standing or looking and sketching. So first I sketch, first I get to know a little bit about who the person is or what the situation is, and then the painting gets created at home. So in Eritrea, I only sketch and listen and talk with people. In my studio at home, the work gets created. And I love the theme of the Kunama woman who was working on the land. And they were actually terracing the land to hold the water so when it rains, the crops would hold. And so there's planting, but meanwhile there's re-terracing, reshaping the land. And she works with a child on her back. And this is what people do in many parts of Africa, not just Eritrea. And there was something about that woman, that shape, the sun behind her, that seemed to speak of people that work the soil and depend on what they plant everywhere. So she speaks for women and men and people who work the land everywhere. Birds to me are a symbol of hope, very, very often, not always. Sometimes they're a protector. Sometimes they're your aspiration, your dreams. And sometimes it's just another side of the human being. We have the physical side and we have the spiritual or the mental side. So it becomes symbolic. My paintings are not really real. They're somewhat magical. They're somewhat about the inner experience as well as the external. I see it as a land of earth, a land of brown, a land of sand and water, but I also see the people and what they bring to it. So the color is partly their clothing, but partly their spirit. Well, first I did many paintings at first, and I called it Africa, from Eritrea with love. And it was my paintings from Waki Village, from Asmara, from Sanafe, and gradually a sense of what people do, what I enjoy seeing about the Eritrean people. So gradually it grew. So that series grew from 1994, a little bit later on, and then I had more to say. So the second series was Eritrea, Ethiopia, Dreams of Peace. So that was during the war years, and just wishing that the people on both sides of the border could make peace with each other, that it could happen. And especially it was through the mothers who were losing husbands, who were losing children. So they spoke for me. They've been to many colleges and university art museums, but some of the very prestigious ones, for example, is the Field Museum in Chicago, the Dallas Museum of Art, Penn State University, the Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., which had a huge display area, and many people from the Eritrean embassy came to that exhibit. So many places, like 20 or more. When I'm excited, I can't remember. But Hampton University, for example, Bennett College, North Carolina, the African American Atelier in North Carolina. So they've been in just a great variety of places, and each time I go and I share my story about my experiences in Eritrea, explain a little bit about the paintings and what I think of the people and the nation and what they have suffered, what they have been through, and the spirit of these people. So that's been important to me, and it's been a great joy to be invited to have the exhibits and to share my expression verbally as well as visually. Well, first, Africa, they know so little, many people in the United States. And they always ask, where is Eritrea? So there's a lot for Americans to learn. And then secondly, how I got there, what inspired me to come to Eritrea, the artists I went to interview, and just enjoyed so much that inspired my work and the people that inspired my work. So there's a lot to share, and they're interested in learning. They are attracted first by the color and the shapes and the design, and then when they look more, they want to know the story, and that's my chance to share and to do a little bit of teaching. I only had the chance to really teach in 1995, and that was U.S. Embassy and Eritrean government-sponsored art workshop. So that was when I really did my main hands-on teaching, where we brought paper, pen and ink, and the work that the Eritreans produced was amazing. It was their stories of the past and the present, what they had suffered as fighters, what they had endured, and the hopes and dreams they had from what they sacrificed, but now the transition to peace. So the sketches they made were symbolic self-portraits, and it tried to show both sides of their humanness. And those sketches are wonderful. I still have copies of them at home. I relish them, and I was able to share them with my students at my university in Southern Oregon University. So it was a great way to make an exchange, to come here and teach and then to go back. And then I had the opportunity through both embassies again to come back again. And when I had created paintings of my work based on my own sketches, I could share them in small format. Small reproductions, and I could take them around the country and show them at schools, from Nakfa to Senafe to just all over. So I began to learn more about Eritrea, and it was such a pleasure to see them interested in me and my impressions of Eritrea. So they would ask questions, and it was a wonderful exchange. Well, I guess so, because the people have invited me to come back and are happy to have my work. They have invested in bringing my work here. I've donated, but it's not been easy for this government, so I'm extremely proud that the government and the artists, at least, think that the work contributes to the people, and I couldn't be a better situation for me. I have such pride in that. There isn't any one word because the people differ throughout the country with specifics in terms of cultural heritage, language, the shape of a house, the kind of colors of their clothing, where and how they worship. But I would say there was a tremendous unity in fighting for the independence of Eritrea, and it brought people together over 30 years like nothing else could. And what they shared in the field, the history of these 30 years of growing up in the field, sharing, becoming one to fight off a common enemy, that has made a very exceptional spirit in Eritrea. And I think this is what people still want to build upon.
Professor La Duke is a retired professor from Southern Oregon University. She's an artist and a scholar. She taught for 32 years at Southern Oregon University. She was born in 1933 in the US. She has traveled the world and done a lot of artwork. So her artwork, as you can see, is very different, very vibrant, colorful, and has a lot of spiritual meaning and so forth.
Oh, it's a joyous painting because it's universal. Kids jumping rope, and this was after the war, after the border war. And it was just wonderful to see that and just to feel like it could be my daughter, it could be anybody's daughters. It is a happy time. So Eritreans, I think, will enjoy this painting. Very often in the village of Wauke, we're invited to have tea. I go with my friend Gabriel Christos, who has a little house in Wauke. He is a former educator and teacher. And people tell their stories. She was saying she had 7 boys, 7 children, but 3 were martyrs. So everywhere people describe their suffering, and still they go on. I was so surprised that women can be very assertive, can have their own way of celebrating, and they come together and the men do their thing during a wedding, but the women have fun too. And I just enjoyed seeing them, and it was fun. So this is one of the paintings as well as one of the panels.
You had presented the gallery also at the 30 years anniversary of the National Union of Eritrean Women in Oregon, was it? Yeah. How did the women feel when?
I was in Oakland, California.
Yeah.
I did the PowerPoint, we say, Africa from Eritrea with Love. And I also show the work of the students, how I first came there to interview Elsa Jacob and Terhas Yasu, and then to teach, and then all the wonderful artists, men and women. This was 4 years after independence, and the work they produced was wonderful and inspired me, and they wished that I could come back, so I did, and I kept coming back. It was wonderful to make friends, and for them to share their villages, because many are from villages, so we could go and visit, and also there were some wonderful people from the Peace Corps that were living here then, Wayne and Lori Kessler. And they too loved Eritrea, and with them I could travel with Gabriel Christos and the artists, always the artists. So it was just a great opening for me of the human spirit and how it could transcend oceans and borders and just enjoy each other as people. Oh, and the food, and the land, and the chickens, and everything.
I'm sure you must have had very good feedback within the last 2 days since its opening. Did the feedback that you've received inspire you to work more on
When I
this
get
kind of
home,
work?
when I go home, oh yes, and I brought my sketchbook with me, so I am making more sketches, and who knows, I'm sure I will always continue making paintings, but this experience is extraordinary for me. There are not too many artists in this world that are having the honor that I have right now. It's not about money, but it's about a spiritual connection with people and the work serving their future, and certainly it's been my life. People love this painting. I know they wanted to take many photographs with this painting, which I call Sorrow, which are the mothers, the women sitting at any of the churches, St. Mary's or any of the churches, but also dealing with what they've suffered and what their hopes are. Small painting came first, of the children jumping rope. So first I did a small one, but I love the theme so much. That's when I did the wood panel, which is bigger, and it just emphasizes without the background the color, the movement of the children. And so glad to see this made into a poster for this exhibit. I thought it was a wonderful choice, a happy choice. And this was a trip to the Saho people in the Santa Fe region, and it was wonderful to see them weave the baskets, to actually meet the women and see them in process. So a lot of the travel I did was to actually see how things are made and to see how those people live and how they look and as they do the work. So that's one of my early and very special paintings to me. The people were mournful, were waiting. But I saw too in the camps, schools were set up for children. It depended on the camp and the time that I came. And, people were trying to carry on as best they could. They were, in some camps, there were even examples of women learning, having little classes. I mean, I was surprised at the variety of the camps and the situations. So not every camp was sad only, but within the time situation, Eritreans tried to do the best they could for themselves, and anyone that had skills used those skills to help other Eritreans and to help normalize the kids as much as possible in any kind of a school-like setting. In some camps, there were even some skills that were taught to women. So I was appreciative, of what I learned, but this is very symbolic of the worst kind of thing where you wait and you wait. This is the market here in Asmara. Yeah, the spice market where the women were working together on a mat. They were sitting and they were working with the chili peppers, and they were taking out the seeds from the chili peppers. I think the peppers were going to be ground or whatever. So you have the chili peppers here, and then the woman opening them up and taking out the seeds, and they were working together as a group. So I very much like the different activities connected with food processing, and that's pretty much what women are doing. So you have the chili pepper design around them, and then they're working together, and they're talking and connecting and communicating. So that also gives people a chance to be together and share with each other. It seems to be, I would call it, a rite of passage, and so on. So that's important because it's food, it's income, it's their livelihood, and just important to do. And I'm so glad to learn that there's split shifts in terms of schooling, so that a young man who's a shepherd in the morning can go to school in the afternoon, or vice versa. So that I learned is very special in Eritrea. In the morning when I'm in Asmara, I like to walk to St. Mary's Church, and it was interesting just to see the women coming and talking and and connecting and sharing. So this is symbolic of the women early in the dawn as they come and greet each other and do their prayers and so on. But this particular painting over here is the basket once again. So it's the basket shape, and I call it a mandala or it's a spiritual shape, but it's not complete because I see Eritrea as a nation in progress that is still continuing to develop and to have hope. And the different faces or the different peoples of Eritrea, it's symbolic of the diversity, Eritrea's diversity, but also the strength of the woman who carries on, who is the mother, who in spite of the suffering moves upward. She's like the tree of life, so that is within her too. And that is kind of a big story in a way. And then to realize that camels, transport, that they were so important during the war years, also for the fighters, for bringing their food, for bringing whatever armaments, and so on, that camels are really an integral part of the terrain, of the land, and of the work element. And sometimes I've seen them harnessed to plows. So to be in the market with all of these camels is very exciting. Go fill these big containers. At one point they were made with the inner tube of tires from big trucks. These were like containers for the water, and the kids would go to the ponds to fill these inner tubes, and that was a wealthy family that could take it back on a donkey. So donkeys are important, and I think it's a sign of wealth to have donkeys, otherwise it was on the back. And that's the life in rural Eritrea and in much of the world, actually. And I enjoyed men and women working together. They worked together, they cooperated. I don't remember if this was teff or millet or which grain, but just the rhythm of the people working together, working very quickly because it's such a tiny season to harvest the food that they have grown for the rest of the year. And so they worked with great rhythm, great energy, and I tried to capture men and women symbolically working together.
Some of them are canvas paintings, and some of them are wooden. And I just want you to elaborate what the difference between these two is, and how difficult it would be to basically carve out a painting, an art in wood.
I love the shapes of certain forms, especially, for example, the children jumping rope. So you saw the painting, and now I also work with wood. So the wood is heavy, and it's plywood, as we say, and it's 3/4 inch, and it's a bit much for me to carry. So I have an assistant who lives right by me, across the street. He grew up with my children. And so first he brings it to my studio, and I make the general painting, just very general. And he cuts out the basic shape, so it's thick. It's not like the canvas, so it's thick. And then once I have established the form in more detail, I make some marks, and I say to him, please carve in here, make it very deep. Please carve in here and make it shallow. Please carve this design and make it very shallow. So we have different depths, and every panel is a little bit different in terms of what is carved and what is left alone. And then in the recessed areas, when I begin to paint, I like to add sand, earth, sand, roughness, so that you have the rough texture and you have the smooth, and that contrast. And I like the boldness of the shape and the design through the panels. So in more recent years, I have begun to work this way. And maybe I'll do some more panels about Eritrea based on this trip and more sketches that I'm making.
For an artist, the product is like their children or a child. Since she's giving us the experience that she put of 65 years of artwork. So basically, this is a reflection. It's like a mirror of our society. So you can look at one of those and say, it looks like somebody we know. So this is our story. So this should be part of our culture, so we should preserve it. And so as you can see, she's still sketching, so we'll see, we might be getting more. We need to start getting our things back. What other people have done outside, what we are doing here, what we have been doing here. We need to collect our story and we need to tell our narrative of so this is our story. We're seeing it as a mirror. So basically, I would say this is like a mirror of our daily lives. In other words, this is Eritrea soft power. One thing I need to mention, what I forgot, is that when we went to Southern Oregon, it's a place called Ashland. When we visited the university that she taught for 32 years, if you go to the undergraduate library, in the lobby, the entire lobby is full of Eritrean paintings that Betty did, photographs, paintings, and so forth. So basically, that's soft power. Her, you can see anywhere, and you can say, oh, this is Betty's paintings, because you can tell. That's like her signature. So we want to have all their artists would have their own signatures. So in other words, there'll be a bigger picture for Eritrea to have all these artists have their own signature, and as a group becomes Eritrea signature. Like we have the cyclists, where now you can tell all the cyclists, then the runners. Now we need to have the filmmakers do that, novelists, artists, painters, sculptors, and all that. So all our products should be that.
I cannot think of a more exceptional gift for an artist to feel that the nation that inspired the work has welcomed these works back into their land and to be shared with the people. It's an extraordinary gift I have received, and I'm very, very grateful, but also have a lot of pride in the fact that this connection was made and will live on.